or your python keeps escaping and strangling children, then you've got to, you've got to, many scams along that road. So I bought a condominium in Thailand. I'm very, very glad that I didn't end up where I was in the Philippines.
Hello.
Yes, good morning.
Hello.
What a fabulous setting for a cozy chat.
Isn't it?
I mean, we've got this is quite visible, and behind us we've got these beautiful rolling hills. There's a gentle breeze keeping the heat down, and the sound of birds and butterflies. I mean, it's almost fairyland, isn't it?
Is it? And these old trees that give shade. I love that.
Well, some things in life you can buy, and sometimes you can't. And you can't. I mean, look at these trees in the background. You couldn't go shopping for a thing like that, could you? And as clever as we are at building, you couldn't build anything that is so magnificent. Yeah. Well, we didn't come to Thailand for trees. I think we have some in Deutschland, and we have one or two in England still.
So what did we came for?
Yeah. Well, we thought we'd have a chat, and this line came between us last week about things that you never imagined that you do in Thailand. Of all the things that you have in your mind when you travel to a place, there's certain things that you quite surprise you if they happen. And I've just written a couple of things. Well, for example, I never expected to live in Thailand. I came here with great enthusiasm to find the country as a traveler, and enjoyed every minute of the time. I was as far north as you can go, I was on the islands, and I literally walked into Malaysia. So I had a great passion for the country. But that was all at the start of a world trip that I did in a year in 1999. And when I returned to England, my heart was very firmly in the Philippines, in the Visayan Islands at the center of the Philippines. And I would have lived there. I would have lived there happily, as much as you can imagine you'd live happily. And I got to the stage after a few years, about 5 or 6 years of spending long times there, that I made an offer on some land, where we lived, there were no high-rise. So my friends from all over Europe and the rest of the world, and Filipinos as well, they would buy a lot of land and build a house on it. And I was in that process, very close to it, and the deal fell through. And I found also during the process of that deal falling through that it's very difficult to secure title on land in the Philippines.
That's one of the snags there.
Yeah, one of the snags, and there's plenty of, in fact, they weren't trying to trick me, but the family who were trying to sell me the land that they'd lived on all their lives, and their ancestors too, they didn't own it, but they didn't know it. They didn't know that their father had sold it in a Marcos scam that went all the way down that coast. Marcos's henchmen went and duped very fine people out of their land, and so it was when the deal fell through. I was close to leaving to come back to England, which I used to do every year at that time. And I stopped off in Thailand, and it reminded me that you can buy a condo in your own name. So that takes me to the second point, which I never thought I'd live here. And it kind of worked in reverse a bit, because I knew I wanted to live in this area. I wanted to be close to the Philippines and or into this area. So I bought a condominium in Thailand, and it's a pretty straightforward process. I bought the first one I bought was not yet built, but I did research, because there's many scams along that road as well. And the developer was well known, well established. So I bought that one, and while it was being built, another one in the same complex, it was a 3-building complex, became available. And I bought that one and moved into it. So I lived in one on this site for the 2 or 3 years that it took to be built. So I wasn't paying rent, and I had this condo. So then I moved into the other one, and finally I'm in the third one. So I bought 3 condominiums in Thailand. I'm currently living in one, the other 2 I've sold. All the processes went pretty smoothly. I never used an agent for anything, not to find them, not to process. Do get some legal advice, for example.
The paperwork.
Well, for example, my example in the Philippines, that the people selling it didn't own it. So it pays to have some legal support when you're making these investments. But buy it in your own name. That's what I recommend. There are other devices. You can't own 100% of a property here. But that's digressing from the detail of it. So anyway, I bought 3 condos in Thailand. I'm living very happily in one now.
You like condo life as opposed to having a house with garden.
There's a pro and a con for everything. There's a lot of advantage to having a house, and then there are some at the condo. In the beginning, the condo idea was simply because it was the first one I bought, which was 50 square meters. I knew I wouldn't be in it all year round, and it's safer to lock up a place and leave it and perhaps trust the staff there to clean it.
Plus for condo security.
It's a very big plus too. It's a very big plus. All of the estates, all of the people who buy houses buy them on estates, and they usually have a guarded gate, and sometimes the guard even stays awake the whole time. But even when he's fully alert and his gun is loaded, nobody watches the back wall. They're not terribly secure. So I don't know a number. A few years ago, there were a lot of cases of people being burgled and stuff. I know of an instant where a neighbor of mine took a night guest to his condo, and he woke up 42 hours later, bereft of some electronic equipment, watches. Even he worked for his brother, who was the developer of that condo, and they even cashed a crossed check for 800,000 baht. It was his monthly payment check. This person, who he thought was a woman, and
you can mistake with that one too, huh?
Speculation abounds. But anyway, she put some dope into his drink, and as I say, he woke up. And he took, going back to your point, he took the video of himself and this person going into the unit and all that. But this individual had a big hat over the camera. What do you expect the police to do, So security is the biggest one. The advantage of a house, if you like pets, which I do, and my wife definitely would have, we'd probably have 3 or 4 dogs and some cats. You can't, it's
another plus for a condo. You're prevented from having pets and having all the work with it.
Well, we just recently imported a cat by dint of saving its bloody life, and now we've got it. The law doesn't prohibit you from having a pet in a condo. And this is an interesting point about buying property in Thailand and condominium law. A condominium cannot put into place or enforce a ruling that usurps the Thai law. So whilst there's no law in Thailand that bans you from having a pet in a condominium, the only thing that can stop you having a pet in your condominium is if it's troublesome, like a loud dog or your python keeps escaping and strangling children. Then you've got to, they can have a word with you about that. But if you're discreet, it's not fair on a dog. I wouldn't want to have a dog in a condo. It's bad enough with a cat, but a dog is fine. So there you are. That's how I came to live here. And a friend of mine in the Philippines, a Swiss guy, Herman, he asked me one time, when did you decide to live in Thailand as opposed to Philippines? Because my normal format was necessary time in England, 3 to 6 months in the Philippines, possibly a month in Thailand. And I said to him, you know what? I haven't actually made that decision. It's just, I've just gravitated more to spending more time in Thailand. So I more drifted into it than made a decision. I didn't do a column with pluses and pros and cons of each place. By now, I'm very, very glad that I didn't end up where I was in the Philippines. For the very simple reason, it was a small, villagey type area, small town area. And there was a lovely rapport with the local people. Now it's super busy. It attracts copious numbers of young backpackers. Fine, I was young once, and that's great for them. But I don't want to go to disco bars in the Philippines. And also they have, again, very fine people, but Japanese and Korean tourists who come for short periods of time. They've got money to throw around, and they let's just say they have an effect on the local community.
Right.
And so it's still a fine place to go. I go there, and my friends are still there. A couple of my friends have businesses there, you know, bars or hotels or something. So I go there and enjoy a month or so, but I never regret not being there. And one other factor, without going into too much detail at the moment, is where we were living in this place, Panexama, which is on the Negros Channel side of Cebu Island, between the island of Negros and Cebu. You are an absolute minimum of 3.5 hours away from good healthcare, medical care. So if you have an accident on your motorbike or anything, never
Or
mind
stroke.
speculating, or just fall off your roof while you're rescuing your cat, for example, it's a long, it's a
Falling
long,
off your roof so you don't have a motorcycle accident.
yeah, well, very tragically, a very dear friend of mine died in a motorcycle accident. He picked the wrong bend. It was the only bend between the beach where we'd been and where we live has a wall. The only bloody bend where there's a wall. Well, bad choice. Anyway, a very dear friend as well. So it was a big loss for all of us. Swedish chap.
I was referring to our last meeting where you said your health insurance only cover half if you have a motorcycle accident. So
Oh yes, yeah. Oh, that's true. Yes. Well, we come on to motorbikes in a minute, but anyway, the next thing from living in a place and buying a property in a place is what I always describe as the short walk to a long future. And that's the marriage ceremony, isn't it? You walk up that aisle in the church. It's a short walk to a long future. And I'm not cynical or skeptical about that. My brother's married. I've seen lots of people who've happily married, but it just never happened to me in my life. And you know, I've had, it's not that there haven't been opportunities, but for the first 15 years of my life after I left home, I was hardly more than 6 months in one place. So I never got married, and one of the things about being in Thailand, a lot of older, well, younger too, but predominantly older, foreign fellas come here looking for wives, looking for a wife, that is to say. And I think it's the biggest mistake you make, because if you're looking for something, you'll find it.
guys, listen to this, man.
If you're looking for a wife, you'll find one, and you'll find one very easily and as quickly as you want to. But I would say, look, come here to enjoy the pleasures of this country, which are in the environment. The temples are interesting, even though I'm not at all a religious person. The food is fascinating. The people are interesting. I mean, the culture in different parts of Thailand changed quite drastically. For me, quintessential Thailand is in Chiang Mai area, you know. I think the arts and the crafts and the food is quite unique up there. But anyway, so I came to enjoy those things. And, you know, I did have more than a few trysts with the lovely, feminine, comfortably feminine Asian women. They're lovely. They're really lovely. They're comfortable with their femininity. And it's quite a change from the way things are going in the West. Although I did have some very fine relationships during my time, but so without looking for a wife, I was quite happily enjoying life, and then I had a shoulder surgery, and the physiotherapist was newly qualified. And we got on extremely well. We had a nice, friendly relationship. And we would have on her day off, we would take a coffee somewhere in the afternoon, usually in Pattaya, and then I'd go out at night, and it went like that. And after she moved, she got a job in a very high level spa called Shiva Som in Hua Hin. And for 2 years, I didn't really. I think I saw her once. She came to visit a friend or something. Anyway, I saw her once, and we had sort of soft communication on through emails and stuff. And but we were developing a lot of common understanding about things we were interested in. You know, it was very easy And then after about 2 years, a friend of mine was going to Hua Hin with his family. So, and he said, "Do you want to come?" Well, yeah, this is a family. They're from Liverpool. So Liverpool's a very popular place in Thailand because of the football team.
Right.
Anyway, I went down there with Nigel and his family and met up with and Thai, this woman I'm talking about, mystery woman. She came to join us for dinner each night. She was working very, very hard and really powerfully long hours. But our friendship slipped into another gear during that time. And then for the next 2 years, we had a relationship where she could only afford to come up to visit me in my condo in Pattaya very occasionally for a weekend. But I could go down there for longer, and I would go down, not more than a week. I would go there for a week and, drive down there in my little pickup. And she carried on. It carried on like that for another 2 years. And she was doing deep tissue massage. She's a physiotherapist, and this clinic, one of their specialisms, deep tissue massage. And she was developing her own problems in her back with this heavy hands-on work. So she changed her career and she qualified as a spa manager. And she came up to Pattaya because the Hilton had just built a hotel in Pattaya, and she was appointed there as assistant spa manager. This was just prior to the opening, actually, so she would have been one of the first staff members. And she phoned me up, as she often did, and anyway, she phoned me up and said that, look, do you mind if I come and stay with you for a fortnight while they sort out one of their staff rooms for me? And I said, sure. Well, why wouldn't you? Come on.
You're a gentleman.
So, yeah. And so I said, of course, it goes without saying. So she turned up. So that 2 weeks, that's about 17 years now, 15 years, I think, at least 15 years ago. It's a long fortnight. And then, I think it was either last year or in 2003. This is how it went. We were having dinner and she was sitting there and I said, how would you like to get married?
You said?
Yes. How would you like to get married? And she said, well, no reply. I got no reply. So I carried on eating my food and she said, you're always fooling around. You're always joking. She said, are you serious? If you're serious and you ask again, I would say yes. And I went, look, I've only asked that question once in my life, and I think I got away with it. I'm not going to risk asking again. And I carried on with my soup. Anyway, he who laughs last, laughs loudest. So last year we went through the formalities, and I'm married now to Thai. It's the first time in my life.
You're married for 1 year?
A year and a bit, yeah.
You're staying with her for 17 years?
Yes, something like that, yeah. I think my name is Carrick, and the Carricks in England, we don't like to rush things, we like to pace it, make sure. But honestly, I really don't regret hardly anything of those significant life factors that have unfolded during the time I've been in Southeast Asia, actually. So it's I'm married. I'm happily married, and at the moment, my little lady is in India on a yoga retreat, and she's going next week to Nepal trekking. So we have we have an honest and solid. There's no point getting married if you're not going to have a proper. If you're not going to have a faithful relationship.
It was running for quite a while before you tied the knot, so I think you're sure.
Well, it's just. I didn't even think much. I didn't do I didn't do a pros and cons. I just thought, because when she moved in for that fortnight, right? Towards the end of that fortnight, we were having coffee somewhere, and she said, "Oh, I have to go to the Hilton tomorrow. They want to show me some of their staff rooms." And I said, there's no rush for that, really, is there? You know, so I think it wasn't. There was no coercion. I think it was a mutual thing, and it's grown. It's grown quite wonderfully. I wouldn't give anybody any advice on what's going to make them happy in life. But personally, I couldn't live with someone that I couldn't have a conversation with. You know, like watch a film and discuss it afterwards, perhaps. Or, you know, I'd need some measure of that at least. You know?
Which is a lot of relationships here, foreign guy, Thai lady, it doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. And it's as I say, it's you can only say in this life what you would be comfortable with. But I've seen fellas. They start to talk the same pidgin English that the woman they're with speaks, instead of, you know,
I think that is the reason why I never took a Thai wife. I come to this country for 40 years and I end up marrying a woman from South America.
Well, as you heard my story, it was never my intention, my plan, nor my expectation. But it did work out that way because the person, somebody once told me, asking me why, this was a woman at an exhibition I was attending, a fair, you call them in Germany. And she was a very pretty woman, actually, and I was checking in, you know, for my little badge and thing. And she said to me, somehow we had got a conversation, and she asked if I'm married. And I said, no. And she said, why not? You know, the question came up, why not? You know, because I wasn't even then a young man. And I said, well, I always think there's 4 things have to be in place before you get married. And I said, the time has to be right, because who wasn't in love when they were 16? The place has to be right, because in my life, I've been on the move since I left home, at least for 15 years. The people have to be right, of course. And the feeling has to be right. Those 4 things. And she said, oh, there's another one. And I said, well, I'm sure if I spoke to a dozen people, they could probably scratch their head and come up with another one. She said, no. There's a 5th one that's directly relevant to your 4. So I gave it a little half-hearted effort to try and figure it out. And I said, come on then, what is it? And she said, the realization that this is the time, this is the place, this is the person, this is the feeling. And it knocked me out because, you know, she weighed these things and came up with that.
It not only has to be there, you have to see it.
Well, you have to sense it, you have to know it.
And how many people, especially after a bitter divorce, coming from the States, coming from Europe, and plunging themselves into a relationship with a Thai woman just not to be alone, and that's the wrong thing.
It would be terribly smug to start saying what people should or shouldn't do, but I couldn't see I never needed that. I mean, in this town, I mean, Pattaya is a place, it's slightly not quite Thailand, actually.
Right.
It's not quite Thailand because the majority of Thai people here are from other parts of the country who've come here for the economic resource, and fair play to them. They add to the place. But you can go out at night on your own and be in company anywhere if you want to be, and not if you don't. It's you don't have to. But never mind. You know, people have different motivations. It's a very dangerous minefield to enter some of these relationships where you're involved with the families and the rest of it. But anyway, I'm not smug about this. It took me a long time to reach this place, and I wouldn't change any of it. I took a teaching diploma in Trinity College, which is a branch of Cambridge University, and I taught English at Surrey University for a summer camp in England, and then I came to Thailand and worked in 2 universities in Bang Sen, where I first resided in Thailand. Previously, I'd just been traveling.
Bang Sen is adjacent to Bangkok.
No. It's about halfway between Bangkok and here. It's about 50 or 60 kilometers from here, next to the town of Chonburi, which gives this province its name. So I worked at Sipatum University there and at Burapha with 2nd and 4th year graduates. And I was doing it for my own edification. It wasn't. I wasn't doing it. I mean, money's money, and it's nice to have more than less. But I was doing it, as much as anything, for my own edification. And it was it was a great pleasure to interact with these young Thai people away from the tourist interface. And it was a great time. I did it for a couple of years, and they sometimes called me back if they were stuck for fill-in teachers. And I also worked at a very appropriately named university in Dumaguete called Silliman University, and I worked there just for a few months. I met her, one of the heads of faculty somewhere socially, and she said, "Look, would you come and do this course?" So I did I think it was 12 or 16 weeks. I did there just one day a week.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I was a university professor, and I never ever thought I'd be that anywhere, let alone here in Thailand. Yeah. So that was one thing. Another thing I never thought I'd do was opt for relatively major medical care or even dental care here, but I have done, and by now it's a preference for me to have anything, at least have a diagnosis here, because very sadly, like many things really, the NHS, the National Health Service in England, is drifting deeper and deeper into chaos. It's not what it was, and they have very good hospitals here, very good hospitals and very good healthcare. And most of the practitioners have worked overseas, a lot of them in Japan and Korea, but also in the United States. You often hear,
You would say if you get sick, rather in Thailand than in UK.
for example, I had skin cancer therapy here, and when it was diagnosed, I was advised to, if I'm going to my own country, go quickly, because it's one of these things that is slow in itself, but once they've done the biopsy, they've kicked it into gear and things start to happen very quickly. And I had that procedure done here. I ruptured an Achilles tendon here, and I had that repaired here. I've had medical examinations, something like health checks, you might call them. Dental care, quite a lot of dental care. It's not, as I say, it is now for me a preference to have those things here than to go back to England. Especially with, I'm not saying that they're not capable in England. That's certainly not the point. The point is, you might wait till it's too
People
late.
always ask, how much is healthcare? It depends what coverage you take, what is your age, probably what kind of contract.
Well, healthcare, it's bloody expensive anyway. Even if you go to the UK and you take private cover, it's going to be expensive. It is expensive. You can get healthcare in this country without any insurance, but you have to pay, and it's a bit, I suppose, to be fair, in my observations of the NHS, the hospitals here, the basic hospitals, are not all that great either. So I wouldn't fancy being in one of them for anything major. So perhaps I've made an unfair comparison there. But anyway, I would stay with the point that I do have an insurance, a middle of the road insurance, and it's never let me down yet. And I've had some claims on it, some pretty profound ones. But you should have some. That's one thing I would recommend to anybody if you can. I know a lot of fellas that live here with absolutely no cover. I wouldn't ideally like to be in that position. But
Good advice is stay healthy.
well, stay healthy. But you live your life, and just all the things that have befallen me, like ruptured Achilles tendons and things. They come from, being a bit active, usually being active and doing things in your life, and you wear yourself out. Your bones are no different to a car engine. You have to service the bloody things, and you can't ignore them.
With your tendon, how did that happen?
Well, I was training with my wife. We did. That's another thing. We shared a lot of activities like cycling, scuba diving, and at this particular time, we're doing marathon runs, and I was training for one of these upcoming events, and I had run up and down 3 flights of 60 plus steps, and I was out running, and I was running across some empty land, which is normally a marketplace, and a lot of dogs. There's a lot of street dogs in Thailand, and they get very vociferous, from time to time. So these dogs started yakking away, and there is a way, unless you get something that's really crazy, you can usually manage dogs after some fashion. But anyway, I got angry with this bloody dog, and I sprinted towards it. I just went to sprint towards it, and then another dog came and bit me from behind in the back of the leg. And so, of course, I immediately turned around on the way down to the ground. I turned around as well. And there was just this empty marketplace. There wasn't another dog for 100 meters anywhere. My Achilles tendon had just snapped. And I attributed it to a dog bite, but actually it wasn't that. It just bang. So that's how it went. I was grateful to find out actually when it was diagnosed that it's a young man's injury, because the average age is between 27 and 37 or something. And the doctor who did my procedure, his most recent patient was a young guy, 17 years old, in the middle of a basketball game, and his Achilles tendon just panged. And a friend of mine was skipping in his office, and his leg it just banged. So it's a noisy thing. It's a big, deep bang. Anyway, I don't recommend them. If you can avoid them, I would leave them out. But anyway, the repair, I was in a plaster actually there's 2 ways of treating that. Either conservatively by setting in plaster, or having surgery. So I read as much as I could, and some said one, some said the other, and the surgeon said surgery. So I went with that, and I've never looked
What
back.
does the surgeon say, right? You need surgery.
Well, he said more than that, and it's another thing about medicine and medical practitioners. It's none of us are capable of you hear people say, "Oh, he's a good doctor, he's a good dentist," but you don't know. You can't make that judgment. What you do is talk to the person, have your questions, talk to the person, and you get a feeling. And at some point in your life, you have to trust somebody, and if you find that feeling of trust, then go with it. What else? Well,
What else?
I'm married. I ride motorbikes now. I lived in England during the golden age of British motorbikes, and I thought my dream was over after I'd moved away from home and motorbikes drifted out of my life. But I currently have a Triumph Bonneville motorbike. This is a classic old. It looks exactly like the bike that my brother bought in 1968, when young fellas thought of 2 things: pretty girls and a Triumph Bonneville motorbike. And my bike looks just like my brother's. It's a much different engineered product, but so I have that. Yeah, something to look forward to. Yeah. And when you live in these countries, I always try to find something to stretch me a bit. I mean, we should be a bit lazy by now in life anyway, but so I got into the motorcycling. I tried to learn to speak Thai, and I'm going to make no excuses. My efforts were not great, but it's an unforgiving language to start with. You can have everything right about your phrase or your word and be entirely misunderstood if the tone is not right. But you do have to make the effort, and I haven't made enough. But I did make some. I learned to play a musical instrument, which I don't recommend anyone come and listen to it, but I can strum a guitar and play a tune and sing a song as long as nobody...
Why didn't bring your guitar today?
And another thing that I was quite pleased with, a couple of years ago, my wife, who was then my girlfriend, she bought me 2 small canvases and a tray of acrylic paint, and they stayed, was it under the bed or in the wardrobe, for about 1.5 years. And then I started messing around with it, and I've now got I've got up to 10 canvases, which I'm quite pleased with, and people who come into my flat quite like them too. I mean, they're not multi-masted boats at sea or flowery little cottages. I'm not an artist. They're just patterns that I like, and so things like that. You have to keep trying to motivate. You can sit in a bar and drink all day as well, but it's nothing wrong with that if that's your thing. But it's
Usually comes with a price.
yeah, but so does everything else. Actually, everything else does. It's I have a bike. Oh yeah, that was another thing. I started cycling quite a lot, as well as the motorbiking. And you fall off your bike sometimes. There's plenty of ditches to bin it into, but so it's yeah. You and the thing is this is the thing. This country has whatever you turn your mind to, you can find some outlet for it here, somewhere along the line. We went it was about a month ago, not so frequently, but we went to see a classical music concert, which it's a great thing if if that's something that you can appreciate. You can find these very high young Thai musicians with good conductors from Europe come in, and you get some from the classic repertoire, Beethoven, Mozart, Paganini, all this stuff is available, and an unlimited supply of incredible rock bands and young musicians, often from the Philippines, especially vocalists. But this you can find if you can play, you could probably find yourself a gig in a band. It's yeah. Well, I didn't expect to do that, and I don't expect I ever will. But yeah, try not to be too tight on your tick box. I did that round the world trip, and I put 5 things on an agenda, and they were hugely diverse, because I didn't want to have too many. I didn't want to be going into places and say, "Well, I've seen that." How it is. It's not. So you give yourself some flexibility in your life as well as your plans. Because the trouble with tick boxes is you will get them ticked. You will get those ticked because you've got that motivation. You'll go and climb that hill because it's on your tick box. But there might be something far more pleasant going on there by the beach. The things I've done since I've left Britain pretty much now, I'm quite happy with.